company, a marketing company asked him to devise a series of shamanic exercises. They're now online, they're available. Believe it or not, he has thousands of subscribers. The example he gave today, one of many. He doesn't need the business. It's hard for him to keep up with the thousands he has, but I certainly recommend this. Also, Alberto has English as his second language. He's a much better writer than I am. Some of his wonderful books are bestsellers, more than I can claim for mine. I think that one of my contributions to shamanism was to find Alberto when we were both in Puerto Rico, and I saw his potential, brought him into Saybrook, got him his PhD, and then he has gone on from there. So thank you, Alberto.
Yes, thank you, Alberto, indeed.
I just wanted to say that I found this book, which is Ruthie's autobiography.
Yes.
And the title is The Light in the Dark, The Search for Visions. And this was published from the Society, published this book, her biography.
So if you go onto revisionpublishing.org, you will be able to order it. And all right, so thank you, Alberto, indeed. It's time for Michael Winkelman to take us to the next steps here, and I'm happy that he is able to join us from Brazil. Michael has known Stan, actually, I don't know for how many years, but I think I met Michael first with Stan at Saybrook in the top floor. I think it was like in 1982 or somewhere around there. Anyways, he has written one of the seminal texts really in shamanism, a biopsychosocial paradigm of consciousness and healing, a very important contribution to the literature. He has published extensively on psychedelics and entheogens, and he is currently preparing for several panels that will happen in November, and I will put the information that he has given me in the chat, so anybody who's interested in attending those panels, you can find the information in the chat. His most recent book is The Supernatural After the Neuroturn, a book that he co-edited, and he also is coming out with the Handbook of Entheogenic Healing. I'm so happy you can be here with us. Michael, please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Jürgen. And it's nice to see you again, Stan. Good to know that you're still doing things with us. I'm going to hopefully have a little bit to say today about how you influenced me. Going back what now is almost, I can count that for at least almost 40 years now. I think
Yeah.
I met Stan, and see if I could bring this thing up and share it. Yeah, okay. So met Stan in, I think it was 78. I just
Yes.
started graduate school at UC Irvine, and Stan came down to give a talk in a series that another graduate student had organized. Stan came to talk about the Momoides dream studies and telepathy experiments, and we talked about shamanism. We talked about my upcoming research that I was getting ready to go to Mexico to do. I had gone to a graduate school to study psi, and socialization, psi in relationship to magic. And Stan was very encouraging in my ideas from the very beginning. So in those early years, I was engaged a little bit in, time in Mexico over the summers, doing parapsychology experiments with kids, testing hypotheses about how the socialization of the brain through the school was sort of taking away the psi capacity, showing that there was a negative relationship between schooling and psi, and being able to do this by studying groups of children where not everybody went to school, from age 6. And these early studies were in part published in Parapsychology Review, Journal of Parapsychology. So I'll say a little bit about where that took me and where it then sort of seemed to come to a dead end, where Stan then invited me to Mexico to go meet with Maria Sabina. So I'll talk about this whole development of my interest in psychedelics because of this interaction with Stan. And didn't end up being my dissertation. Shamanism was my dissertation. So I'll eventually come to talk about that and how Stan has sort of championed a lot of the ideas that I've put out there about how we should try to understand what is and is not shamanism. But I think, the two big things that I got from Stan was that when he came to talk to us, I'm going, wow, you really can get a PhD studying this kind of stuff. You can get a job as a professor somewhere. I mean, it's like, yes, this could work, And the other thing that I was just, constantly sort of encouraged by Stan was this idea that, this spiritual dimension is not about, woo-woo stuff. It's about physical reality. It's about human biology. And from looking at psi to looking at psychedelics to looking at shamanism, a lot of my work has really been driven by trying to understand the biological connections of what most people would think has no relationship to biology at all. So thanks, Stan. And this is where a number of his influences have led me. Along with doing the more strictly parapsychological research, I stayed true to my initial intention at graduate school, which was, let's figure out how what we know about parapsychology is related to what anthropologists claim to be the nature of magic. So I ended up publishing this article in Current Anthropology early in my graduate career. And you can see over on the right side, if the images aren't covering it up, that Stan was one of the people I thanked for his comments on this magic, a theoretical reassessment, which basically was trying to show how what a lot of the things that parapsychologists had discovered about psi and psi facilitation were also principles of magical practice, the use of alterations of consciousness, the importance of belief and expectation, even things that were more theoretical, such as the notion that there was sort of like a model or an imitation, or keeping a model in your mind. Goal-oriented thinking was such a fundamental aspect of magic, as well as what was being substantiated by parapsychological research. So when this article came out, I was thinking that I had made a real career breakthrough. Most of the people that congratulated me on having written a career-ending article, and I heard it so many times that I had to start to think about whether psi was the right direction to take. I was also having trouble publishing my parapsychology stuff, although I published some of the studies, but both within mainstream cross-cultural psychology, I did studies on this socialization issue in different cultures and with different groups of children, and was trying to develop some more general models. But even parapsychologists weren't interested in process-oriented research. They wanted, a control group or a t-test, a treatment, non-treatment design, which just wasn't part of how I was learning how to do research. So about the time where I was starting to question whether or not parapsychology even made sense for me to do, got an invitation from Stan to go down to meet with Maria Sabina and other sabias, wise women of Oaxaca. And so, as I recall, it was in January of, I think, 81, right in there, that I met up in Mexico City. We met with Salvador Roquette, and after a little bit of difficulty of getting on the road and a long detour through Oaxaca, which I had forgotten about until I read Stan's memoirs recently. Instead of going straight to Villoldo de Jimenez, we had to go all the way around through Oaxaca because of horrible roads we couldn't get through on. So we ended up going there, and of course there were some backstories. This may look like some pictures on the internet, but actually they're my own pictures, and I had given up looking for them today when all of a sudden I found them with my wife's photos. So there we go. I didn't really know the backstory of the sadness of Maria Sabina in these pictures. Later, I discovered more about, some of the tragedies in her life and difficulties. But there were some interesting lessons learned that day. I wish I could still find the picture of the mountains and the seas of clouds. We were up there in Maria Sabina's house, and when you look down into the valley, it was covered with clouds, and there were just these little mountaintops sticking out of the clouds like islands. It was a very impressive sight. But I also learned some interesting things that day about the importance of knowing what you want to study before you start asking questions about it. And some of Stan's colleagues from the Bay Area came down with a list of questions to ask Maria Sabina. And their questions started off like, well, Doña Maria, what can you tell us about how to improve our general practice therapy? And so someone translated it into Spanish, and someone translated into Mazatec. And then there was a discussion between Maria Sabina and the translator that went on a bit. And then he says something in Spanish, and it gets translated back into English. Well, I guess you'll have to eat the sacred children, the Niños Santos, the mushrooms, and see. Okay, they went to the next question. Doña Maria, what can you tell us about how to improve our therapeutic practice with couples that are going through, difficulties, divorce? Once again into Spanish, and the Mazatec, a little bit of discussion, comes back into Spanish. Necesitas comer los niños santos para saber. You have to eat the sacred children to know. And they went on to their third question, which basically went through the same routine, and it comes back. You have to eat the sacred children to know. They went to their fourth question, and Stan says, I think that's enough questions for today. But this is an example I used many years in my field school in Mexico, to tell some students, you can't show up here with a list of questions approved by your graduate committee and expect to do a good research project. You've got to be involved in the local context before you even know what a sensible question is. And of course, the other important point there was something that was started to come more popular at that time, the idea of participant ethnography, particularly in the understanding of these alterations of consciousness, in that if we were really going to understand what was going on, we had to take the mushrooms. That's how you got the answers. And so we didn't do the ceremony with Doña Maria. She wasn't actively practicing anymore, but we did do one with Doña Clotilde, who was one of her students. And based upon that, Stan and I were actually invited to write an article for a major anthropology magazine journal, which then they quickly rejected, saying that, we don't publish things about people's experiences. Oh, okay. So it was published in a few places. I didn't get a picture with Maria Sabina. I didn't have this, notion I should have a celebrity picture. But I did that ceremony that night with Doña Clotilde, and a couple of interesting things came up for me. And one was that while we were sort of waiting for the ceremony or the mushrooms to sort of kick in, come on, I was just doing my meditation, breathing. We had taken the mushrooms with cacao, chocolate, and later I understand they function as MAO inhibitors, enhance the mushroom effects. And I start, listening to the singing, and I'm starting to hum and whistle and sing. My hands start to bounce a little bit, and my legs start to bounce, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm starting to sing and dance while I'm sitting in my chair. And Stanley and Doña Clotilde came over, and they just shut me down. Now, Stan says he doesn't remember that. I never forget it, but it was not a bad experience. I just went back into my breathing. I entered into a kind of ecstatic state, minor bliss. And during that night, I'm listening to people around the room vomiting and crying and wailing. And I was just beaming. I was so happy. It was so good. And I knew then I was going to spend my life studying the psychedelics. It was my first ritual experience. Before then, LSD and mushrooms had been an important part of my life at some level, off and on. But I hadn't really taken them as a sacred path, a ritual path, a path of personal development, although I obviously was doing that without a lot of awareness of it. But it was clear to me from that experience that there was just something very important to understand about these substances, how they related to our past, as well as to, now I understand, our future. But shortly after that experience, I went back to California, managed to find an ad to buy the Stropharia cubensis spores. That's what Psilocybe cubensis was called then. I understand now they came from the McKenna brothers, and I started financing my way through graduate school, growing mushrooms and eating them regularly as a cognitive enhancer. So a lot of my career has really been interested in these substances, although they weren't the basis of my thesis on shamanism. I'll come back to that. And Stan kind of stepped back into the picture in terms of my development along these lines. 1993 or so, I was invited to edit this yearbook of cross-cultural medicine and psychotherapy on sacred plants, consciousness, and healing. And so Stanley contributed an article to that book on cross-cultural perspectives on creative behavior under psychedelics. But his real influence on that book was on my chapter. And I had become dissatisfied with the use of the term hallucinogen, narcotic. Psychedelic was a little better, but to me, there was a whole lot more going on than just mind manifesting. And so I tried to come up with a different term, and I ran some ideas by Stan, and he says, I like psychointegrator. I like psychointegration. I think you're onto something. And so I've been pushing this idea now for about 30 years that what is really fundamental to what these substances do is a form of psychointegration, integration of the brain system from the lower levels into the emotional brain up to the frontal cortex. So global brain dynamics of these psychointegrators, starting off with the enhanced neuromodulators, serotonin and dopamine, not just merely neurotransmitters, but neuromodulators, in the sense that they're able to affect a lot of other kinds of neurotransmitter systems. Also, something else that I think a lot of people forget these days is that it's not just about serotonin. Eventually, the serotonin systems get overwhelmed, habituated, lose their repressive function, and they release the dopaminergic system. So this is what's coming up. These lower levels of the brain are being released. We get these ascending slow wave theta discharges that are coming out of this thalamic limbic circuitry. It's a bottom up from the brain stem to the limbic brain to the frontal engagement with these theta waves that are basically bringing all of these, often overwhelming sensory, emotional, visual dynamics out of the lower brain. And I perceived that this was also integrating the behavioral brain, the emotional brain, in the frontal cortex. And there was even some evidence back then that interhemispheric synchronization is going on, largely because the left hemisphere is getting taken offline, the right hemisphere is being accentuated, and it's starting to be the mediator of all this bottom-up information transfer. So the psychedelic mechanisms of psychointegration, the agonist effects of serotonin, they have reuptake resistance, they lock out the serotonergic system, something that was known back in the 70s. I remember when I was an undergraduate, Rice University, going to the medical library reading that, yeah, they're blocking the serotonin receptors as well. This releases the dopaminergic system. And it was also known back then that we're getting these enhanced theta wave discharges. Now we know, due to Franz Vollenweider's research, that these are the cortical striatal thalamic cortical loops that basically link the basal brain to the frontal cortex and back down. They're kind of a feed-forward feedback system that enhances the connection of the frontal brain with these lower-level brain processes. And this is possible because they're taking the frontal brain processes offline. And so this idea that they disturb the prefrontal cortex functions, inhibit the default mode network, is well known in psychedelic research. The rebus model, what people aren't paying enough attention to is what's coming out of the lower brain, what's getting liberated. And this, to me, is the alternative to the contemporary psychedelic model of relaxed beliefs. This has got nothing to do with what you believe. It's what you feel, it's what you experience. It's what's getting brought out of these ancient brain structures, this psychointegration. So common features of psychointegration that go beyond these simple brainwave dynamics: shift to parasympathetic dynamics, relaxation response, enhancing the endogenous opioid release. We're getting this synchronized brain dynamic that's sort of more coherent than normal. Normally, our brain is very disorganized, beta, alpha, theta, all over the place. But now it's getting coherently synchronized. The right hemisphere is being activated. Synchronization between the two hemispheres. gamma waves emitting out of the lower brain areas, stimulating the theta dynamics, and then producing this integrative information processing. So before we had this notion of, total brain functional connectivity, the evidence was there that that was going on. So you probably have seen this picture, and if you haven't, you probably know which is the model of the brain on psilocybin. It's the one that's connected all over the place. So what we're getting with the psilocybin effects and with the 5-H2 psychedelics in general is this enhanced connectivity between the areas of the brain that are not normally in connection with one another. Indeed, normal brain, waking brain, is all these frontal areas are talking to each other and they're telling the rest of the brain to shut up. We don't need you. We're in charge. Take out the prefrontal cortex, the default mode network, and all of a sudden, all these areas of the brain are surging and connecting with one another in novel ways. And I think this explains a lot about what the power of the psychedelic experience comes from. It's allowing us to put together the kinds of information that we don't normally get access to, and putting it together in novel ways, and putting it together in ways that it doesn't normally connect. Now we see how the whole thing fits together. So a lot of my publications have been on this, understanding the relationships of psychedelics and shamanism and the evolution of human religion. Understanding these aspects of psychedelic experience from the point of view of evolutionary psychology. So I put out some hypotheses here that nobody seems to want to test, but I think it's clear from looking at the evidence from shamanism, the experiential dynamics of psychedelics, is the mirror neuron system has got to be a central part of what's going on here. The mimetic brain is what's getting activated. This is why we have all these intuitions. It's because the part of the brain that reads behavior and turns it into images is what's functioning. I think, Terence McKenna was right on with his stone date theory. Apologies to the stone date, but I mean, we were enlightened apes, let's face it. And so I've laid this out here in a co-authored article. 2007, I put together an article for this book, Psychedelic Medicine, Shamanic Guidelines for Psychedelic Medicine. It's a little bit of an anomaly at this point. ResearchGate tells me about 4,000 people have read it, but only 20 people have cited it. So I guess people are getting a lot of usefulness out of it, but they're not telling us what they're doing with it. But hopefully they're applying it in good ways. And if time permits at the end, I'm going to come back to this idea that shamanism can tell us how we should best use psychedelic medicines. And it's basically this idea that we have an evolved psychology. The set and setting is not arbitrary. It's something that was evolved under the influence of psychedelics. It created a particular kind of natural psychology or evolved psychology of human beings that is in part an entheogenic ecopsychology and part of shamanic psychology. Of course, what all of this begs the question of is just what is a shaman? And this was something that Stan and I had talked a lot about from the beginning, and Stan has widely promoted my ideas here. And it began with the notion that while Eliade was onto something, that his concept of the shaman as someone who enters ecstasy to communicate with spirits on behalf of the community was a little understated. There's a lot more than just what is suggested by that brief definition. Of course, this is not something that is widely accepted. People question whether or not shamanism is anything more than a Western invention. But what I tried to do, and this is where my dissertation research went, was to understand something about the idea of shaman as a cross-cultural phenomenon, something that was similar across cultures and not subject to just some arbitrary definition like someone who enters ecstasy, because all kinds of practitioners of the supernatural can enter ecstasy. It's not just someone to heal. Lots of healers are out there that aren't shamans. It's not just someone who communicates with the spirits. Lots of different kinds of people communicate with the spirits. So my thesis, a cross-cultural study of magical religious practitioners, did a cross-cultural sampling of religious healers and practitioners, formally characterized them with data. Data is available in the standard cross-cultural sample. I did cluster analysis and came up with these different kinds of practitioner types based upon empirical data rather than arbitrary definitions. And Stan has promoted this idea of mine that shamans are different from other kinds of religious healers in a lot of his different publications. As early as this republication of this book, Stan was emphasizing this notion that I later elaborated on in the Shamans, Priests, and Witches, that shamans are different from other kinds of practitioners, and we need to pay attention to that. And I think that this has to be, one of the major, still yet to be widely accepted notions, that somehow we don't use the shaman for just any kind of ritualist. It should have a specific kind of meaning. What my cross-cultural research showed was that this empirical cluster of practitioners that I called shamans as a label, but which were defined by the empirically shared characteristics found in hunter-gatherer societies or simple agricultural societies, their major activity was a nighttime, overnight group ritual in which they engage in a dramatic display, chanting, drumming, dancing for hours and hours at a time. Healing was the primary functions of shamans. They also did divination. They were also thought to be important in finding animals for hunting. And unlike our New Age shamans, they were pretty much universally feared for their ability to kill people with their magical powers. As Eliade had pointed out, selected through illness, torment, demand of the spirits, trained through something that can be called the vision quest, going out into the wilderness, fasting, singing, chanting, waiting for the spirits to show up, a visionary experience, often typified as a soul flight, capacity to transform into an animal, believed to be able to control animals, to use animal powers, to be an animal, to travel in an animal's body. Particularly notable formation through death and rebirth experiences, powers that come from controlling animal spirits, and their ability to control animals physically, to tell you where to go hunt, to call the animals to the campsite or to the slaughter area so that they could be sacrificed for the group, and doing malevolence. At least that's what everybody else believed about them, that they could steal your soul or put a magical dart in you as well as pull it out. So if you do all these things, and this is the core of how you function, then maybe you are a modern shaman. But most of the time when I find contemporary shamans and I start to say, well, how many people have you killed? Well, no, I don't kill people. I'm a shaman. Well, then to me, that's not what shamanism was about in forging societies. And that ought to be our model of just what it is that we consider to be a shaman. Now, Stan took up a lot of these issues in his article here in American Psychologist, which was one of his speeches that when he was given the award for distinguished contributions to international advancement of psychology, and he decided to speak about shamanism, conflicting perspectives on shamans and shamanism's points and counterpoints. So a lot of the rest of this talk, at least halfway through it, is going to be sort of structured around a lot of the principal points of Stan's article here. He started out with this notion that there was lots of different views of shamanism, from this is just something that is a sick person who somehow got famous, to notions about some kind of stable delusion or pathology, to some notion about someone who was actually an effective healer. So Stan obviously pushing the notion that we need to get rid of these pathological models and come to a model that views the healing as a legitimate aspect of what shamans do. I'll spend a little bit addressing this psychopathology issue because I don't think we can completely dismiss it as easily as Stan and Roger Walsh and others have tried to do. I think we have to understand that there may be a legitimate issue of a psychopathological trigger that stimulates an endogenous healing response. And that's what the shaman is about, is someone who's able to take on these traumas and turn them into a growth opportunity. I'll look at some notions about just what is shamanic consciousness. Again, is it advanced or is it degenerate? And as Stan has pointed out, there's not just one shamanic state of consciousness. We need to have diverse ideas about what kind of states, conditions, experiences that shamans go into. And Stan puts it in the context of having access to certain kinds of information that I want to exploit. And Stan didn't dedicate much time at the end of his talk article to healing, I think probably because you don't get to talk forever and you run out of time. So I'm going to add some things at the end here about shamanic healing. And if time permits, and I'll probably have to skip over stuff to get to it, I want to say something about a book about entheogenic healing that I've edited recently and still waiting for a response from the publisher, but Stan has graciously written a forward to it. And so time permits, I'm going to say something about that book too. So first, Stan has, repeatedly pointed out, shamans are different from the shaman healers or agricultural shamans, healers, etc. What's the difference? Well, the shaman healers are not just in agricultural societies, politically integrated communities that are led by priests. Shaman's not in charge of society anymore. They got private rituals. They may assist the priest, but they're also doing agricultural rituals, animal sacrifices. And they engage in formal professional groups, and they're doing spells and rituals now. They still do a lot of the other kinds of things that shamans did about dancing all night, but it's not for the community at large. It's for a family or a small group of clients. The healers, complex societies, politically integrated with warfare. Healing and agricultural rituals is what they do. They perform animal sacrifices. Their formal professional groups are very powerful. They control sectors of the economy. They may be part of the political system. Very little altered states of consciousness or communication with spirits. They deal with the high gods, not animal spirits. If anything, they're exercising animal spirits. And they sell spells and formulas. And once again, private rituals. And then the mediums, which are often confused with the shamans. Ruth Inge Hines is someone who has extensively studied mediums as far as I'm concerned, but has, lavished them with the term shaman. But these are largely just females. They tend to be from lower classes in society. They may have prestige among women, but they're not well respected in society at large. They tend to come into this profession in early adulthood, and it's a possession experience. They're taken over normally by male spirits, superior spirits, and gods. And they have these convulsions, tremors, seizures, compulsive behavior, amnesia, dissociation. Instead of the shaman's soul flight, out-of-body experience, they're possessed. And they heal by exorcism. So they're not very similar to shamans on a lot of different points. And just one other point here, I've applied this notion of, the differences among shamans, healers, mediums, and priests to the Siberian data. And as has been pointed out by lots of anthropologists across time, not everything that is called a shaman is the same as another shaman. They're very different. And so when I apply this model to what's been called Siberian shamans, including some of them that were in my sample, yeah, some are shamans. Others are mediums, and some that weren't in my sample but are widely attested to in the literature as white shamans, they're not really even shamans. They're selected by the clan leader. They sacrifice animals. They don't have to have shamanic illness experiences. They don't undergo travel to the spirit world. They deal with heavenly deities. They normally don't do any healing. They don't have helping spirits. They can't remove evil spirits. They can't even wear the shaman's costume and headdresses. They can't use their drums. The other shamans aren't even allowed to come to these ceremonies. Why? Because these are priests. These are not shamans. So, if I've got, one thing that I really appreciate out of Stan's continued insistence that, shamans versus healers versus mediums is that, we don't do ourselves any service by trying to call everything a shaman and then trying to figure out how to explain something that includes, priests that do exorcism and crazy people that are, homeless in the park, and that guy with the horns and the spear that invaded the Capitol during the, the insurrection back in 2020. What is a shaman needs to have an empirically derived set of characteristics, not an arbitrary set of definitions that you decide who gets to be a shaman and who's not. I don't think it makes much sense to use the term shaman as it's just bantied around today for anybody who happens to do a ritual to interact with the spirits and maybe alter consciousness. I have proposed, however, the idea of shamanistic healer may be a good generic term for ritualists who use alter states to heal through spirit relations. But back to conflicting perspectives. Basically, Stan was addressing the question of, are shamans mentally ill? And of course, that was one of the early ideas about shamans, that whatever they were doing, their behaviors resembled hysteria, schizophrenia, psychoses, who knows what. And this concept has been countered by anthropological research, at least even by some Russian scholars in the 19th century and the 20th century. Cherkagov's book on the psychomental complex of the Tungus addressed the central feature of Arctic hysteria as we would say now, a culture-bound syndrome. Normative behaviors, perhaps provoked by, the starvation periods during the winter, by, extreme cold, by even perhaps some genetic abnormalities that might make people more inclined to be hysterical. But these were not crazy, sick people in their own culture. They were behaving in normal, normative ways, and even in ways that were functional. If you looked at the shaman in the context of the culture, these were not marginalized, schizophrenic, or psychotic people. These were powerful healers, community leaders who provided crucial community services and were, in essence, the vessel for presenting the group's cosmology, organizing ecological relations, even providing the basic social events of the community, in addition to being the healers. So this idea that shamans are mentally ill, has been, I think, largely rejected by, the people who are well informed about shamanism. And this is a lot of what Stanley outlined in his article here, that, as Walsh had pointed out, and as others had pointed out, such as Knoll, if you look at the diagnostic criteria for schizophrenia, shamans just don't match up. They're functional. They don't have even the kinds of hallucinations. Schizophrenics are auditory, not the visual ones that the shamans have. But there's this persistent notion that shamans do manifest something that's not just outstanding or extraordinary, but a little unusual. David Whitley has compiled a lot of accounts, ethnographic accounts about examples of shamans being insensitive to pain, showing psychomotor agitation, just shaking and being sort of uncontrolled for hours at a time. And then also having superhuman strength at times. Also something that's often attributed in some cases to psychotics. But the would-be shaman in particular is what I think we need to focus on, not the full shaman, but the person who has been selected, who still has to undergo the development. Because they do often go through periods of confusion, being withdrawn, running away, not eating, staying out in the wilderness for weeks at a time, being incoherent, and even engaging in various forms of self-injury. So what is this all about? Well, Walsh did agree that there were acute psychotic episodes during formation. And so I think we have to take that as a clue to what may, in the long run, be a key to understanding why it is that the shaman becomes a healer. What we see both in some kinds of early onset psychosis as well in shamanic conditions is often a dramatic turnabout that shows that a very high state of functioning and being a competent individual can be the result of these initial disturbing experiences, even if the person maintains a very sort of dopaminergic, excited, even we might say charismatic and maniacal social personality. In the case of psychosis, this can be the result of the inability to resolve crises that lead to premorbid conditions, but then in that condition of of suffering, something comes together, a spontaneous healing. Spontaneous remission is often the case of people that show just the temporary, initial acute psychotic episodes as opposed to long-term psychosis. So it seems that there may be similar kind of dynamic in the crisis that leads to the call to the shamanic vocation. And indeed, in the case of most shamanic traditions, this call that is visited on the would-be initiate in the form of illness and sickness and hallucinations and the threat of death is something that they have to accept as being an invitation from the spirits that they must undergo a developmental path. So what has come to my attention in recent years is the concept of pivotal mental states. I read this first in an article by Harry Brower and Robin Carhart Harris, the latter of psychedelic fame, with his model about psychedelics being, a mechanism of change through rebus, revised beliefs under psychedelics. But in the Pivotal Mental States article, he makes a completely different argument about what happens under psychedelics. And he considers these pivotal mental states to be these periods of crisis where a person undergoes a very high level of stress from multiple mechanisms that lead to this state of breakdown of the ordinary ego dynamics and coping mechanism. And he proposes that what this results in is a hyperplastic state that allows for rapid psychological transformation through deep and rapid learning that, once again, in his notion, involves relaxation of prior assumptions that allows for change. But what we never see in the rebus model, or in this one either, is just what are these relaxed assumptions. What we see instead is evidence of a almost instantaneous psychological transformation. If you go into a psychedelic ritual with a problem, you don't sit around thinking about your beliefs and what's going to change. Something happens to you, something clicks. All of a sudden, the serotonin kicks in. There's some other state of being. A different self is expressed through you. But what Carhart Harris and Brower has provided us with is an understanding of how the stress can trigger these kinds of dramatic changes, and it's through the activators of the serotonergic 5-HT2A receptor system. It's not the standard serotonin system that allows us to endure stress. It's the serotonin system that's preferentially activated by psychedelics, as well as by social isolation, fasting, sleep deprivation, acute pain, and other kinds of stressors. And in general, the idea is that you have a chronic stress load that then all of a sudden gets accentuated to a level at which you have a breakdown of your normal model of the world. But in this breakdown of the normal model of the world, you get things put together in a new way. You make connections in a new way. You find a new way of seeing things. You find a new way to approach problems. And all of a sudden, this new approach to life is what enables you to overcome the crisis. So I convinced Harry Brower, Robin's co-author of that other article, to write an article about shamanism and these pivotal mental states. We had so many differences about what we wanted to say that I still have an unpublished article on this. Someday it'll be out. It'll say a lot more about these pivotal mental states and shamanism than what we said here. But Harry took it in a very interesting direction. One that's makes it clear that shamanic practices are deliberately inducing these pivotal mental states. That what you get in the shamanic practices of fasting and isolation and periods in the wilderness is basically replicating the natural consequences of being lost, starving, traumatized, fearing for your life, running from wild animals, and staying awake until you finally get back to safety of your group. So the direction that Harry took this article in was, if these shamanic practices that mirror these, transformative, periods that are produced by psychedelics are also produced naturally without psychedelics, maybe the implication is that we should be using this psychedelic dynamic of development as a tool for dealing with people in the early psychotic stages. That we should give them something that, in essence, on one hand, kind of pushes the critical stress level beyond their normal, chronic stress, but at the same time, give them all of these shamanic technologies, these tools, they're going to enhance the serotonergic system and its ability to enhance our ability to solve our problems. So how does shamanism do this? Well, I think the shaman's death and rebirth experience is a playing out of this pivotal mental state. And the shamanic death and rebirth experience took this highly stereotyped form around the world in which the shaman initiate is out in the wilderness, attacked by animals. They tear the shaman to pieces, eat him, scatter his bones around, and then bring them back together, reconstruct the shaman, put the bones back together, and incorporate themselves into the reborn, rebirth shaman's body. So I suspect that part of this dynamic is a primordial archetypal human fear, being attacked and eaten by wild animals when you're lost. But this vision, I think, can also provoke a transformation, and that the death and rebirth experience is a kind of auto-symbolic representation of the destructuring of the ego and its restructurization. Charlie Lofton talked about this in terms of a holotropic drive, a drive toward wholeness and toward the transcendence of our current level of identity, particularly when the current level isn't working any well. One of the ways in which shamans did this transformation is through power animals. I'll come back a little later to one of Stan's ideas that I've elaborated on, the idea that the innate intelligences are part of understanding shamanism, and what has been called natural history intelligence or animal knowledge is one of our innate intelligences. Without elaborating upon that idea here, I want to point out that what shamans do is use the animals as forms of empowerment, as natural symbols for the person to change, and that this allows them to incorporate into their identity, into their sense of who they are, what we intuitively understand about the qualities of animals. So in essence, animals are being brought into the normal socialization process by which we take the external other and incorporate the external other into our self. So this gives a way of behaving differently than you did before. And while I was putting this together, I had a memory about another conference that I was with Stan at. And the person that was the chair of a session that we were in, I won't name him, had worn to the session a picture or painting of a woman who was just about nude and looked like she was having sex on a motorcycle. And before he got 2 minutes into our session, a woman up in the audience, like, what the hell are you doing wearing a shirt like this? And the whole session just turned to him and her and him and her. And 25 minutes later, I'm going, this isn't working for me. And I walked out of the room, took a walk around up somewhere in Northern California, went down to the lake, came back, and I said, I'm going to tell this guy off. And I walked up to the door of the conference room, and there was a mouse standing on the floor right in front of the door, standing, not on all fours, standing. And I was going to have to knock the mouse out of the way to open the door. And I just sit there and looked at the mouse. And I'm going, what are you doing here? And the mouse just stood there. And then all of a sudden, I had this thought, maybe I'm supposed to be like a mouse. And the mouse just walked off. So I went back into the conference room. The session was about over. I didn't tell off the speaker, but, if you have a shamanic attitude about the world, you can incorporate animal species into your personality. And in this case, I let this animal do what I have often claimed is the case for shamanic work. You give the animals a role in the hierarchy of control within your self structures. So this sort of takes me into a part of my own research that, Stan has always supported, but hasn't, been a part of as much. But there are some things here that have to do with what Stan has had to say about how shamanism works. So I'm going to take Jürgen's permission to talk a little bit about what it is I do with my own research. And that may not be very much at all, as I see we're getting close to the end of time. So I think I'm just going to do this a little MTV. I've laid out a lot of ideas about how shamanism is part of our evolved psychology. An important part of that evolved psychology has to do with mimesis, but also how altered states of consciousness change the way we engage with information. I still use a term that Stan has often corrected me on, talking about altered states, when I really don't want to use the term states anymore. We can look at the different technologies for altering consciousness, which I think is a better way of looking at it. And I must say that this 2-volume book that I edited with Etzel Cardania, it had been originally signed as a contract to do altered states of consciousness. And recalling my conversations with Stan, I said, we're not going to use this word. And Stan co-authored 2 articles for this book. I think he was actually part of the advisory group for this book. One about altering consciousness through sex. And if you want to know what Stan has to say about that, I think you're going to have to buy the book. I don't think it's available on the internet. But the 2 volumes, I think, are very reasonably priced still. And they show that the significance of altering consciousness goes well beyond psychology. It's embedded in numerous fields of humanity.
Yeah.
In different areas of the humanities and physical sciences. I laid out my paradigm there of the integrative mode of consciousness, sort of expanding on this psycho-integrative notion. Stan, in his book, Demystifying Shamans and Their World, talks about modifying attentional states. I really like his idea of deciphering images using the symbolic capacity to infer meanings of images, an examination of innate image schema. So getting into the innate mind. And this is something that I've explored in a number of different contexts. The idea that the whole supernatural domain and much of what shamans do really has to do with stimulating our innate cognitive operators, bringing us back to these ancient parts of the brain. So I've developed general models about the biological bases of the alteration of consciousness. I think that it has a lot to do with this integration of the ancient areas of the brain, that this is a normal pattern of the brain operation that's every bit as intrinsic to the brain as is dreaming or sleeping, and that it liberates aspects of the unconscious mind. Looked at the origins of the integrative mode of consciousness and dreaming, responses to these pivotal mental states, to near-death experiences, even the runner's high, extreme running. Sorry, Stan, I won't get to add too much about the therapeutic effects of shamanic practice, but once again, a lot of endogenous healing aspects are involved there. And the integrative mode of consciousness, I think, once again, gives us a good paradigm for thinking about how it is that changing consciousness, integrating different brain systems, learning and unlearning of information allows for behavioral and emotional and cognitive integration, particularly through these symbolic image systems that are really, I think, encounters with our own unconscious potentials. So a lot of things about ritual technologies of healing. I wish I had time to go over. I'm looking at my time here. I think I'm supposed to leave a little to the questions and answers. So I'm just going to say, got this handbook of entheogenic healing that Stan's written a forward to. We look at commonalities across contemporary entheogenic healing practices, what they share in common. And what I discover is that this corresponds well with the evolved psychology of shamanic ritual healing, that this is part of an adaptation to human biology, and that shamanic ritual can be seen as best practices for the psychedelic renaissance. So maybe the shamanic guidelines for psychedelic medicine may still have something useful to say almost 20 years later. And to wrap up, what I remember, Stan, one of the things that comes to my mind is, people remember a good story more than a good citation. And Stan always had very good stories to tell about his incredible experiences with shamans and healers around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was just a wonderful overview of your work and Stan's work. And I think we can take 2 questions. So if can you stop your share, Michael, so that we can see the entire screen here?
So would you like me to make a comment right now?
Please.
Yeah. Again, you folks who are hanging with us just had a wonderful education from Michael Winkelman. I like his term psychointegrator better than any other term. It hasn't caught on, which is a shame. Nowadays, people talk about the theogens, the God within. The problem is that psychedelics don't always find the God within. So that term is not a good substitute. Psychointegrators is fine. Also, Michael's structure of religious, shamanic, etc. healers, yeah, that framework is based on data. I constantly ask, where is the beef when I hear about these theories? Michael has provided the beef. His cross-cultural survey has provided us with a useful framework for discussing religious healers, sorcerers, shamanic healers, shamans, mediums, the whole ball of wax. Also, I like Michael's emphasis on evolutionary psychology to understand shamanism, because this brings in all the wonderful work on the brain that he has cited, as well as anthropological work. Tomorrow I'll be saying the same thing about dreams. I think an evolutionary approach to dreams is superior to any other approach. You can't beat evolution as far as I'm concerned. So thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure knowing you all these years. Our visit to Maria Sabina, by the way, was initiated decades ago. I read an article in Life magazine by Gordon Wasson about a Mazatec healer who he disguised her name, but she was actually Maria Sabina, never realizing that 2 decades later I would be there face to face with this legendary shaman. I've written widely about her, so has Michael, and all I can say is that meeting Maria Sabina face to face was one of the anthropological highlights of my life. And I have written widely about Maria Sabina and our time with her in Huaca de Jimenez, Oaxaca, and given her good publicity. And you know, I swear that she has helped me out from the spirit world. A number of shamans have done the same. I don't want to make an issue of it, but sometimes things appear in my abode from nowhere. I have a whole shelf of what are called apports. Sometimes things disappear. Well, Maria Sabina was involved in some of that. So those are my immediate impressions. I cannot recommend Michael's books too widely. He's also written a marvelous book about immigration and cultural subcultures in the United States. He deals as a scholar. I have had the pleasure of visiting he and his wife in their beautiful home near the rainforest of Brazil. What a good choice for a home. And he does his wonderful writing from there. He attends international conferences. Why not? He's saving money living in Brazil. This wonderful country, this wonderful scenery. And I don't want to be euphoric. He and his wife live one of the most beautiful lives in one of the most beautiful settings I can imagine. So, obrigado, Michael.
And thanks for visiting, Stan.
Well, thank you both. And I think it's time for us to move on so that we keep up with our schedule at least a little bit. Thank you again, Michael. That was a wonderful overview. And I put your upcoming events in the chat so people can see there in case they want to attend. And of course, they can find your publications easily online. And so thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for the honor, Jürgen. Take care.
Yeah, you too. So I want to invite Tom Pinkson now to speak to us. Tom Pinkson has come to our conference numerous times, starting many, many years ago. I actually don't know and don't remember what his first year was. He is a transpersonal psychologist. He has been initiated in the Huichol tradition. He is initiated in a 12-year course. He has published quite a few books, Fruitful Aging, Finding the Gold in the Golden Years, Shamanic Wisdom of the Huichol, and others. And also, importantly, a book on spiritual rite of passage teachings from children with life-threatening illness. And that's where a lot of his work has been, with children facing life-threatening illnesses. He's done that for 3+ decades. And he walks between two worlds, between the indigenous worlds, indigenous spirituality, and our Western world. And he has given me some information about how he can be contacted and what he does, and I'll put that in the chat also. So if you're interested in being in touch with Tom, you can certainly do so. So Tom, take it away. Thank you for being here. Welcome, welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jürgen. It's good to see you. It's been many years.
It's
So
been
good
many
to see you.
years.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here. I think it was just a couple of days ago. So I have nothing prepared, just some reflection thoughts, and open the doorway and we'll see what comes through. So initially, what comes through is a story, and it goes back to when I was 8 years old, and I was suffering from asthma. I had life-threatening illness with asthma, and I got sick with a very high fever. Turns out, I found out later, the Coxsackie virus, which is a precursor to polio. So the interesting thing about this experience I had at 8 years old was I'm lying in bed, suffering, burning up, and all of a sudden the walls of my room start to breathe in and out. These solid substances start to move, and the designs on the wallpaper start to undulate. Now I'm 8 years old. This is 1953 or something like that. I have no framework for understanding what I'm experiencing, but I know what I'm experiencing is something very different than anything I've ever experienced before or heard about it. It's a different reality that I had no clue existed. That was my first experience with an altered state, or whatever you want to call it. Move forward 12 years, and I'm undergraduate at San Francisco State, 1965, and the whole hippie psychedelic revolution is happening. I'm living in a couple of blocks from the corner of Haight-Ashbury. And after a year of preparation, as a budding psychologist, I'm interested in the unconscious. I was very politically active, a cynical, rebellious, bitter, fighting against the war in Vietnam. Went ahead and took LSD for the first time in a quiet setting with people I respected. And it opened up 3 morphogenetic fields of access to infinite creativity, which I didn't know existed. It activated a morphogenetic field of accessing infinite unconditional love, which I didn't know existed. And it activated connection to a life in Mesoamerica, a previous life in ancient Mesoamerica, with the understanding that this is something you're going to return to at some point, but it's not for you to seek out. Go on with your life. 15 years later, the opportunity to go, the invitation to be able to go down and be with the Huichol people in Mexico, their name for themselves, the Huicharika. And the guidance was, this is what you've been waiting for, so you need to go through that door. So the information, the transformational, numinous information that I experienced coming through that initial LSD experience led me to how do I understand and ground this? How do I integrate this? How can I make sense of this? How might I be able to access these states of consciousness that were so blissful, so ecstatic, so literally mind-blowing, without necessarily having to take a substance? And at that time, in the late 60s, every other storefront on Haight Street was Buddhism, was Zen, was Hindu, was Sufi. There was such a rich offering in the Bay Area at that time of these traditions from the East. And so I plunged myself into all of them and learned and studied and worked both academically, the courses, but also experientially with the gurus and the teachers, and I learned a tremendous amount of practices to altered state of consciousness. But it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 years later that it came into my mind that I want to learn about the ways of right relationship of the land where I'm living on, the United States, Turtle Island. I want to learn about the indigenous people where I live, where my parents were born, where my bones are going to be buried. And so that led me into indigenous people, connecting with indigenous people here in the United States, and going through testings and teachings and initiatory experiences, which included the 11-year apprenticeship with Huichol shamans in Mexico. And with the introduction to indigenous people here in the United States, eventually I was led into the visionary experience, the Vision Quest experience. So I've been, I'm a strong believer. If I've experienced something that really speaks to the fullness of my being, I'm going to keep ringing that bell until it stops ringing. So I've been working with psychedelics in a ceremonial way for almost 60 years. And I've been going out on Vision Quests for this March will be my 51st year of going out on Vision Quest. Hopefully, Great Spirit's help, at 80 years old, I'll be able to continue that for my 51st. So let me just check in with you, Jürgen, for a minute, because I want to honor the times. I think we're supposed to close at 5.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to have to boogaloo here. So I think what I'd like to do is, in the understanding of like a scout, when a scout goes out from the tribe, from the group to unexplored territories to see what's over there, and then comes back to the tribe, they have a responsibility to share with the people of their tribe. Well, what did you see out there? What did you learn about? And so from over 50 years with working with a particular lens opening to altered states of consciousness with the Vision Quest and all the testings and teachings that come from that, and the 60 years of working with psychedelics, and over 40 years, almost on a monthly basis with ayahuasca and mushrooms, doing journeys and working with people around the country and seeing what comes through those journeys. Responsibility to sum up and share what's come through those journeys. And one way to do that is just to speak briefly and explain the terms of my new book coming out in March, which is Psychedelic Shamanism, Wisdom Warrior Path to Transformation. And what's going on in the world today, we know there's a transformation that's needed of consciousness, of understanding, waking up from the delusionary perception of separation, which is the root of fear and violence that is so prevalent in the world. So psychedelic, first of all, I want to acknowledge, Michael, I don't know you personally, but I'm just mind-blowing scholarship. So thank you for that. And Alberto and I were in one of the first classes, groups of people who went through which was then the Humanistic Psychology Institute that eventually became Saybrook in 72, 73. And that's actually where I met Stan. So let me digress for a moment and then come back to the path I was on. I knew about Stan's work through the research I did, reading I did about psychedelics and dream work and altered states and parapsychology. And Was very delighted to find when I was considering where I wanted to do my doctoral work. I knew I didn't want to go to what I'd call a straight school. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't want to have somebody lay a trip on me. And Humanistic Psychology Institute and people like Stan were able to, Tom Hanna and others that I met there, were interested in people who had a vision, had some success on the physical plane and manifesting their visions, and they wanted to support those people in growing to a higher level what they had to offer. So I'm grateful, very grateful to the experience that HBI offered me to get my doctorate. And then Stan and I reconnected years later through our mutual friendship with Rolling Thunder, who was one of many Indigenous teachers for me, and then through Ruth Inga Hines' conferences at Santa Sabina that we were involved in. So I just want to take a moment and honor, having spent a lot of time in Indigenous cultures and seen the way elders are valued and used in a socially integrative way as compared to what happens to elders in our culture. I want to say to you, Grandfather Stan, I use grandfather as a respectful way, thank you for being a true wisdom elder. Thank you for all you did over the years supporting me, your gentle, supportive, loving soul and intelligence and wisdom and vitality and creativity and stimulation. Most recently writing a little endorsement from my book coming out in March. So Stan, thank you for your life. Thank you for the way you've lived it. Thank you for being a true wisdom elder, touching so many of us with your generous sharings and intellect and creativity and loving and kind and generous heart. All blessings to you. Oh, Lamprios. So coming back to the title of that book, and just briefly explaining each what I mean by each term, shamanic. Well, I do like the term shamanic in terms of mind expanding. And so that's what I'm using it in that reference. Shamanic, or psychedelic shamanic, wisdom warrior, path of transformation, psychedelic, that which opens the mind. It might be with sacred plants, but it's not necessarily limited to sacred plants, but it's more a state of consciousness that opens the mind, and as I use it, deepens and expands and raises the bandwidth of awareness to where we recognize, understand, and live from what I call the 3 A's. Aloha, which is an old Aramaic word, it means sacred unity. Aloha, sacred love, infinite unconditional love. And alegria, joy, to be able to open our minds and understand and live from a recognition of the sacred unity that we live in, that lives in us, accesses the essence of our being, the infinite unconditional light and love that we are, sacred, worthy, luminous beings of love that is for giving and receiving. And alegria, the joy to be able to live from in the midst of all challenges that we face, personal and in the world today, to still be able to keep our hearts open and be channels for healing light and love into the world and through all our interactions. So that's what I mean by psychedelic, shamanic, shaman. As Michael said, all kinds of thoughts and theories, and I'm just going to refer to the fact that shamanism isn't a religion, but it comes from people who have an understanding of relationship to the true reality of reality, that underlying all that we see, the magnificence of all that we see and experience and sensory experience in the material world is the underlying world of spirit. And shamanic practices, and a shaman, in my understanding, refers to someone who's learned how to go through what the Huichos call the Neorika, the doorway, the portal between this world and the other world. And that takes the death of the ego, that takes going through many initiatory death and rebirth experiences to be able to get through that doorway, to be able to access the noumenal world, the Nahual, and to create relationships through the initiatory experiences with spirits, helpers, and the plant spirits, animal spirits, ancestor spirits, ally relationships that those helpers teach you about their medicine. So the work that's done when you come back through that Neorika in relationship to the ceremony, the healing work, or whatever the situation is that spirits called you into to try to be of service in, that it's not even you doing the work. It's not you doing the work. It's calling on your allies, and because you have the good relationships, that way you feed those relationships on a daily basis. In my case, to keep them alive and functioning, and keep those doorways open. You have faith and trust that they're going to come through for you and help you do the work that Spirit's brought you to do. So shamanism the shaman is the person who's been through those initiatory experiences and developed those relationships with the spirit helpers and able to call on them to do the work, and able to, through their practices, open that Nayarika and go through it whenever they need to. It might be an all-night ceremony. It might be sitting bedside that I've just been called into if somebody's dying, and I'm being called into that situation, and how to use those practices to open the doorway to get the help and bring it through in service to the need of what Spirit's brought me to. And so psychedelic shamanic pathway, the wisdom warrior. What is wisdom, and what do I mean by warrior? The discipline, the strength, the focus of a trained warrior. I trained in martial arts and Aikido. But what I'm using the term warrior in this context is the battles, the inner battles with the shadow, with what one tradition calls the inner adversary, the shadow, the unconscious, the habituation, and befriending our own mortality. So we create a relationship with it that empowers us in our lives instead of constricted in fear. So calling on the disciplines of the warrior to be able to go inside and do the battles that close our hearts, that shut us down in fear and judgment or thought forms of limitation and negativity, when the truth is we live in a universe of infinite possibility. And what is wisdom as compared to knowledge? To me, wisdom refers to what I spoke about with those 3 A's, that are able to read the waves of information, the vibratory waves of information that are coming in whatever situation you find yourself in. So you're able to you get the information of those waves of energy, and then call on your spirit helpers to help you with wisdom, guidance, strength, support, insight, vision, to be able to create a response to those waves of whatever they might be in a challenging situation, to open the doorway, the Nayarika, through your response, open the doorway to bring through the potential of fullest blossoming, greatest good in that situation, whatever or however horrendous it might be. And this is the path to the transformation. Now, one of the things that I want to close with a little ceremony, so I better cut this really short. So you go out on Vision Quest, you make that journey into the mystery, and you're going to get assignments. You're going to get homework. So a homework assignment I got a couple of years ago as I was approaching my 80th year was, Tomas, not everybody is going to be able to come to a medicine circle with retreat that you do every month, or go on a Vision Quest. Those are small groups of people. And the medicine I've given you, the teachings I've given you, are not just for you. You need to create a vehicle of bringing those insights, those understandings to a larger audience. So I said, okay, what do you want me to do? I said, I'm going to give you guidance about creating the traveling cosmic magic mojo medicine show, and take it in and start taking it into nightclubs. Started in Santa Barbara, then it was up to the Shakespeare Center in Marin County. And I just lost vision of everybody. I don't know. Can you still see me? I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, I can't see anybody, but you can see and hear me?
Can see you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
well,
Yes,
Coyote's
we can see
working.
you.
All right, well, I don't need to see me, and God bless all of you, but real quick. So what's the essence of, so the Traveling Cosmic Magic Mojo Medicine Show is a way of using story and song and music and ceremony to bring these teachings through. And what's the bottom essence of the teachings? Real briefly, and then a quick ceremony to close. Number one, we are way more than we think we are. I think everybody listening knows this. It's just reaffirming it in you. We're way, way, way more than we think we are. We all have access to infinite creative wisdom energy of the universe. We all have access to it. We all have cosmic codes embedded inside of us through billions of years of evolutionary wisdom, that when they're activated, and that's the shamanic practices, the activation of those practices, opening the mind, deepening, expanding, and raising the bandwidths of awareness to recognize the 3 A's, the Alaha, cosmic unity, the Aloha, infinite love, and the Allegria, to be able to live from that place as we go forward to meet the challenges of our lives. So 2 quick things in closing here so we can be on time, because I'd like to respect everybody's alignment about that. So Alberto, can you guys see this candle?
Yes.
Okay, good. So in the Huichol tradition, the first shaman is the spirit of the fire, grandfather fire, who gets its kapuri, its energy, its chi from father son, who gets its energy going all the way back to the Big Bang and the transmission through one solar explosion to another. So when we light a candle and see that light, we're literally opening a doorway, a nearika, a connection to the beginning of the universe, the creative wisdom power of the universe flowing through us right now, and it's communicating. And so I'd like to just share a song that comes from Tatawadi, Grandfather Fire Spirit, the spirit of the light that Alberto referred to, and send it to you, Stan, with gratitude for being what this song's all about. But so it's coming through my voice, but it's coming from the spirit of the sacred light. I'm sending you light to help you remember. I'm sending you light, hold you in love. I'm sending you light to help you remember. I'm sending you light to guide your way home. Love is the answer. Love is the key. Love is the healer. Let love flow through thee. Let love flow, Yahweh. Let love flow, Yahweh. Yahweh. Yahweh is Pomo Miwok word for thank you. So before I close, here's one more assignment that starts with addressing the shadow, and then I'll close with gratitude. It starts with clogged pipes. It's kind of like a rap here. Pipes clog, struggle, resist, persist, frustration, anger, coyote laughs. Got you again, boy. Accept, let go, release, whatever needs to go. Medicine trying to come through. Open the door, drop into core. Time to explore, guidance to soar. New vision, new sight. Understand, delight, decision time. Power to take, creation to make. For your sake, show up and deliver. Show up, show up, show up and deliver. Here to be you, to yourself be true. Polish your star, shine near and far. Show up, deliver, truth that you are. Show up, show up, show up and deliver. Here to be you, to yourself be true. Light and love to all, light and love to all. Don't have time, pay the dime, say the name, play the game, praise or blame. Light and love to all. Above, below, around, within, through all time, heart sublime, through all space. Rest your race, love your face, light and love to all. Sing the song you're here to sing, only you can do it. Don't get sung, your soul you wrung out to dry. My, oh my, don't let it go by. You carry gifts only you can share. Don't be spare. Show you care. Do as you dare. Live as a prayer. Light and love to all. Malcolm and Train, Sojourner and Douglas, Cochise, Nina Simone, all on loan. Stand for justice, stand for truth. Mother Ruth, Baldwin, Tara, Kuan Yin, Chavez and King, Dolores, Huerta, you know who hurt ya. Soul speak, heal the leak, no more weak. Jackie Robinson, Mary Anderson, Gary Snyder, Rose and Thorn, live your power, no source, follow course, honor voice. All we are saying is give love a chance, over and over. Light and love to all. In your bones, make a new Jones, diamonds and pearls, new kinds of words. All we are saying is give love a chance. Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you, Grandfather Stanley Krippner, for being the good man, good wisdom elder that you have and still cooking at 91. God bless. Oh, that's it, baby.
Thank you so much, Tomas.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for being here. let's
3 minutes early. 3 minutes early, dude.
3 minutes early. So let's take a 5-minute stretch break before we move on. And Stan, are you trying to say something?
Yes, Ray. First, I want to thank Tom Pinkson for his eloquent presentation. Also, I noticed that Sandy Rosenberg is on the list. Sandy has created a website for people to share their anomalous experiences. Very, very valuable resource. And more people should know about it. This gives us a chance for a virtual community where people can share their out-of-body experiences, their near-death experiences, their parapsychological experiences, you name it. And so they don't feel isolated and alone. Okay, thank you, Sandy.
Sandy, can you put the web address into the chat so that everybody can see it? That might be helpful here. Thank you, Stan. So let's take a 5-minute break and then we will continue.
Yeah, by the way, I cannot eat saltwater taffy with my dentures in.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Later, when I have them out, I'll be happy to.
Cái gì vậy? Cái tao bây giờ mà nó bom nó là gì? À, lấy gì?
Here's the Zoom.
Yeah.
Headphones here.
That's what it says. It does not.
Suru tawa re ngai suru lau bi ma lau eh.
Have the earphones.
Suru tawa re ngai suru lau bi ma lau eh. La ban lau. La.
Here's what you'll never notice. I don't want to just.
So let's get started again. I see the Bonpo there. I want to welcome Gyanesh Lama, Dr. Gyanesh Lama. And Gyanesh, maybe you can introduce your dad whenever the time comes. I have asked that the Bonpo does a blessing ceremony for Stan's imminent 92nd birthday. And so I'm so happy that it is possible. And actually, the Bonpo has just traveled from Nepal to this country and has just arrived. So Gyanesh, why don't you take it away?
Thai about this. Thank you, Gurgen. I will be translating for the Bonpo. Just to give a little background, what a Bonpo is, maybe I will say a couple words, not too much. You have heard about Lama, like Dalai Lama and many Lamas. So the tradition, pre-Buddhist tradition in the Himalayas, before the Buddhism was brought to Tibet, was the tradition of Bonpo, which is similar to shaman. But the Bonpo predates any organized religions. And so in Nepal, in the Himalayan traditions, you'll hear people say, are you a Bonpo or are you a Lama? And so Bonpo and Lama are beings that are in a way inseparable. You cannot talk about Lama without talking about the Bonpo. So in the West, you probably heard about Lama only, then maybe Bonpo is a new concept. In fact, there's not only Bonpo and Lama. It starts with the Bonpo, then the Lama, Ganba, Tamba, and so there are 5, and then the Gyalung. Gyalung is the monk. Okay, so Bonpos are reincarnated beings who exist with the formation of the universe. So the dissolution and the formation of the universe. And this is what Bonpo see, and this is what Bonpo will say. I know in the West, we struggle with the question of creation. And within the Bonpo tradition, there's no belief. In fact, Bonpos do not believe in anything. They see as things are. So the Bonpos see as the formation and the dissolution of the universes. And Bonpo are able to see that through at the limits of the space and all the way to the subatomic level of existences. And so So the Bonpo's job is to take care of the all existence, humans and all living beings, from early in the morning, from the sunrise to the sunset. And the Lama's job is to take care of the beings after the sunset. That's why you will see Bonpos wear generally white dress, and the Lamas the maroon is the color of the sunset. So you'll see many Lamas do mostly after death ceremonies, funerals and memorials, and the Bonpos do healing, empowerment, transmissions, and so and so. Some of the Lamas also do those, but their tradition come from the Bonpo tradition. So here today, we are asked to do a small ceremony for Stanley. Happy birthday, Stanley. I am my computer is saying you have 40 minutes, 48 seconds. Some Zoom is installing. Hopefully we'll get it done before that.
Yes, let's do that.
We are honored to do a small ceremony. We will probably not take that long. My dad Bonpo just arrived here a couple of weeks ago. I came here, I'm in St. Louis right now, St. Louis, Missouri. I came here just this morning so that I can translate this for you. So my job is only translating whatever occurs here. We have no pre-plan. So Bonpo does what he does, and where there is a translation needed, then I will translate. Otherwise, normally you just watch it and listen to it, and keep in your heart whatever you wish that happened to yourself and to the birthday boy, Stanley here. And so that's how the healing takes place. What you see here in front of me as a preparation, it's not really elaborate preparation that we normally do when we are in Nepal, and when we have all the elements that is needed for the ceremony. So you'll see here the butter lamp. Then we have the flour with the rice, and we see the we call bumba. That is we have the 5 element presses amrita, and then here you will see water to purify, and the incense that also purify a place that makes the place sacred. So what I have asked the Bonpo to do today is to call on the spirit for Stanley for his lifelong. Okay, so this will be a long life prayer for him, sort of empowerment. So the way Bonpo works is Bonpo will just do what he needs to be done, and then as he does, if there's something that needs to be translated, and I will do that. Often many of the words that Bonpo says is very difficult to translate. It's generally the sound that he evokes, some mantras that the sound itself is what causes the transformations. So here you are. So please sit comfortably wherever you are. If you are in a meditating traditions, meditate. And just more importantly is for Stanley, just keep in our mind for him to stay healthy, to have a long life. Okay, and this water and many elements is to eradicate any kind of things, sort of in a way, sort of a cleansing, whatever that needs to be cleansed. If there's something like that causes us to become older early, so so to speak. So I'm trying to sort of make a sense here. But anyway, so I will ask him now to do the ceremony. So. They say, was I with Kepa Muleo, because Kepa, Tela Minza is Stanley Kripner, right? was a Stanley Tribunal Vivo, get Kepamula, Bogal Bliss, Sunni, Bayan Nabe Barsa. Tabala, Tinila Tela, Janma Divasti, Lover Niga de Hajim. Hela Lagiri, the Maisi Blau, Chipindo, Che Bumbo to Paramulachi, Olashi Low Adagam, the Demula to Lide Sumberman, the Man Rangna and Alashi Sumula.
là gì là công ty nó công ty bảo anh là tăng về mình sẽ là cái gì sẽ là năng sẽ cú chỉ bảo mà là thuê bằng cái những năng sẽ cú chỉ bảo bảo anh làm gì ai ta chỉ bảo anh mà là ai mà làm sẽ ta bảo đó thế là thằng nói đi nói như đó mà này đặt vào nó có ba số đó với ba số tất nhiên là phải đó ai ở đây ba tất nhiên là một sai không ai mà bên mà đó ai ở đây ba tất nhiên là một sai ai bên mà đó tất nhiên là một sai không chăm chỉ bên vậy na thì sẽ ai ở bên mà nó là tám cái năm cái qua hỏi là nó có mà cái mà nó cũng là mà bài này cái dạy cho cái lại chiếc đây rồi đây dạy là vì bày ra đây chứ
So, Kepalas. Maybe Kepatam Bang Bartalo.
Ôn đây ta sa ba ba chi ta sa ba ba chi ye mai ra ta ta ba ye mai ra ni ba ba chi te na ta sa ya no ni te ai ba ya ha no mangala bingal ya do de ni ka ga na de ni ma ko de ni ma ko na ko do da ha bo de ba bo mai ra ta ko ro mai ra ni ko ro do da ka ba na a chu ho ra bo ro do da ka chu ei shen nam na de wa da no yo na yo na ro bo da ka chi wa bo da chi chen ga ma bo nam ga de na na bo ro do da ka wa bo lo chen ga ma na de yo do de ha bo yo cha ra ta cha sam ba ba chi ra bo ro do da ga de sa chi cho đại lệ ra gì nông gì cho đại lệ ra gì chẳng gì cho ta ra gì rồi thế cho ba gì đó cô lô cho hồ ta cả chỗ gì thế có để gì có cả cái chế ra na đi cả chế câu thế ha chi có để chữ ba bồ đô chỗ ta ca bồ đô na la ca đi e ba có nhiều xe ba đạo xe ca chi có để chữ ba ý yo xe xe có hồ xe ý yo xe xe ý yo xe xe có yo ma me de me ho ro me ho go wa re do wa go ro da wa ga re ji no ki yo ra go ro da ki ri na yo ji de go de ye go go ro yo da ba e sa jo ji wa re do mo gu da wa ga re ji no ri do mo gu da ra cái đó mà cô ta chế định ra dù chính số mai chi đến rồi ô lô cho mà chỉ mà cho mà đi đâu là cô đô cho ta cho cô chỉ mà ra đó cô hồ ta cả mà ra bị ta chỉ ta cô ta mà đừng ai rồi đi lấy đồ cô cha đi ca chi có đi chi có phải rồi na ô hai thi đi chi có đi chi mày mà sao ra na đi ca chi có ya ra để bà đi bà yêu bà si bà đi chế bà mà ra na đi thành cô chế bà bố si cô chế bà cho đấy cô chế bà ấy ra đó chế là cô bà chứ bố rồi hồi ta gì là cô rồi ba chỗ là chứ tôi được phải đi là tôi cũng nên phải đâu ba chỗ đi đây cái chỗ đi phải ba chỗ nói chỗ là hay phải ra thế nói là tiếng đó là vô cha đi cha câu đi cha câu đó vô đó của ta chế câu đó chế câu Không phải bài hôm nay anh cho đối thủ kiểu mà hai thầy họ phải mà chế đại ai vào cả ai việc sẽ có chí phải mà chỉ là bây giờ là chưa
So something has frozen, and the sound is frozen. So Ganesh is going to try to re-enter so that we can complete the blessing. Going to go out and come back. And we're dancing with the trickster and the technology. So I hope everyone will be patient. Here they come. It's not exactly your regular happy birthday song, but it has a lot of beautiful energy. The Bonpo is transmitting directly from his connection with his spirit energy. He calls his law, and that's his direct connection with the spirit. So let's see.
We apologize for this. Lucy, can you hear me and see us?
Yes, now we're perfect. We had a
Okay.
little glitch, but now we're back. So yeah.
How long, were you not able to see most of what he was doing, or just a
No,
little?
most of it we could see. So if you want to just translate a little bit, it was a wonderful energy. So if there's anything you want to translate, that would be great.
So he called onto the spirit to bless Stanley for his long life. Those of you who are not familiar with the tradition, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
For some reason, this computer is giving me to choose a language, and I don't know what that
So
is.
you're fine. You're fine. Just go for it.
And there are many beings, celestial beings, that only people who have a clairvoyance, the ability to see things beyond material existence, can see them. And those beings, some of them are endowed with the ability to empower you with long life. Others have the ability to remove obstacles from your life. Others have the power to bless you with wealth, and others, and so on and so forth. These are the spirits, celestial spirits, that Bonpo's call on to bless. And Bonpo said early in the beginning that it is not me. I don't have the power to really extend somebody's life or to determine death or life or all the events. It is he alone. Also, he also relies on these higher celestial beings to do those things. So he is simply requesting that on behalf of Stanley. So that requires a bit of preparations for the spirit to arrive, and so that's why the cleansing is needed, because these celestial beings, for them to be able to descend down to the earth, we have to prepare a ground. And that ground meanings all the elements that exist here has to be purified. So in the simplest form, we do with the flower and the candle light. Those they're the light, so we prepare with the flower, because those beings, their seed, their abode is the flower. So some have an abode that is flower, others have their abode which is some sit on the lion's throne, and so on and so forth. And so here this so while after he did this, he also took a look at Stanley's life. Stanley, if you hear me, Bonpo asks you, you have a little bit of a fear in your mind at this point. You also have a little bit of a disturbances in your dream. Is that true? That's what the Bonpo was asking you. Do you have things like that happening?
Sorry, Stan can't answer at the moment. So I think you should just proceed. So he can't answer that question at the moment. He's not right there.
There's Bia Hamro. Was a la Hamro. Te what are there's was a Bia Hamroge. Was a mea was a lama I what a lagi the Maisi Teda Tinami Glassipino, Molami Glassipino. Okay. So that's what he says. He's gonna do a little bit of an empowerment also for him on that. Okay, whatever it says. So in order to help him ease through this process. And it turns out this is also year. Looks like Stanley was born on the year of the monkey, and so this is the year of the dragon. And so he's going to remove any obstacle that might come on his path in this particular year. Okay. And in between, he has done many things. I will ask him in a second. I think we have still some time to sort of explain what was he doing, why he had to put rice on this water vase, why he's putting flour on water vase. What is the meaning of that? What does that do? And so on and so forth. Okay.
Then Shiva Vyadaji, Damadeshi, Tarwala Dova, Jam Tapdova, Koma, Jengdova, Ratanda, Vimula, Suri, Ratanda Bhava, Damati, Bhadoji, Vima, Dindasala, Kalok Haji, Dindasala Lajiri, Ama Umir Niji, Umir Nimayanze, Dama Tikbatova, then Kiwa Akaba, Ginuna Akaba, Kiwa Kata Alava, Natan, Tarola Doba, then Tan Tarola, some ditches, Tibet, Samyangba, Tumyangba, Bramangba, Bitala Inirim, Mendola, Rati, Samyangba, then Orang Bumula, Salgate, some to Tikim Bema. Say, Tori, Quishi, Lama, Hesta, Toko, Toba, Samai Kaji, Samai Lama, but Hesti Lado, Bima, Talon Lado, Body, Toji. Sama, she was a Hata, Natan Lado, and Tabi Lama, Talon Lado, Tama, Kiam, Chapata, Saik Lado. Chăm chú vật chất sẽ đâu biểu quân vô anh naman quân vô số là đi sẽ đâu biểu và những tích ta là về mà đi cha chỉ có về đi cha vào đi quay là yang là ta bây giờ mà thế là ngắt thân cả rồi ta tôi vào sao mày tích cái gì mà ta vẫn đâu biểu Dhan Dachina Dabu Master Lamada. Dhan Lamada Ahin Lamada Dhan Nasi Aqueva Achapa Night Ashidi Chapa Anaide Lamada Dhan Ashapa Lama Natan Samsu Bata Mane Mandang Siang Bata Jam Sapata Dhan Dachina Dabu Sante Dela Ayuda Boravdala. These are, you know, she said, when it's about to move, they said, watch and Natala, then Dama, Chiva Badi Mendoda, Laspante, Ada Badena, Lasta, Lasoba, and you can do that. But I said about that one day, young by the number, the world like you was you was that day. But Candid, yes, they good. I don't know, they good. Like that. How about you then? Chăm cho bác lại đi xét lâu vụ, chăm thăm bác lại đi xét lâu vụ, mà để mình đang con vô số bác lại đi xét lâu vụ, thì chăm bác lại sao là ai cũng bảo làm tay sao là các bạn thu qua chân tay thì sao là.
Okay. So, so what he said was that Stanley is at an age now that he is going to become more like a child, like, and this is a time. So we become, after you pass certain age, like 84 years, then we become a children second time. So Stanley is in a time like that, and so this is a appropriate time to engage in we call dharma activities. What that means is virtuous charitable activities. What we have done in the past up to this point is because of the merits of all the good work that we're able to. Stanley was able to live this long, this far. And now the time is not to really worry about this life. This life is that we have already lived it. But now the life, what we need to do is for the next life, what comes after. So to be able to engage in those, we need to extend our life as far as possible so that we can engage in those dharma activities, charity activities. So that might involve anything like, for example, if you wish to extend really truly wish to extend your life yourself or your parents or some loved ones. Some of the activities you could do is, for example, if you see an animal or could be bird or something being taken to a slaughterhouse, if you buy them and set them free, prevent them from being slaughtered, the merits of those good karma, those action helps extend our life. So saving lives of others has a good karma, got merit. So things of that nature, engage in charity and so and so. So when you do that, when you're engaging in those virtuous activities, that automatically extends your life, because the intention to live much longer is to engage in these virtuous charitable activities. And so that's something you can do yourself and for yourself and also for others. And so the Bonpo advises for Stanley, as he's already been doing lots of good things. It is because of those things that he has been able to live this long, that continue those activities and is squarely focused on engaging in only virtuous activities that will help him live longer, in addition to all the things that he has already done. So the things that the Bonpos do, that as he has done today, is empowerment for the long life. And oftentimes there are celestial beings, the spirits, who have vowed in their life when they were a human or other beings, they have took a vow that because they suffer so much, so if anybody comes in their name, call upon them, asking for a long life, for example, and that's the spirit Chiring Dolma, during the 9th sun and during the time of the 9th moon, who took a vow that anybody who come in his presence asking for long life will be granted that. So it is this the spirit that the Bonpo communicates when he has to call for endowing with a long life. And that's the ceremony that he has performed today. And I apologize that I think you may not have the full sort of experience because of technical issue, and it's not also in the same place. But that's what Bonpo did, and I will ask him why he did the thing that he did. He did many things here, a lot of elements here, and he performed. He probably didn't hear everything clearly, and also some of the activities that he was doing here. So I will ask him just to say briefly why that was done and what is the benefit of doing that. Thích chào bà, Abba. Abba. So toldo ai sẽ tama chum la iser use hin. So was la you bala karan dik was la dik the yudoba was you ma dik taba ai sẽ che dik the ranba besi long.
ý giờ mà yêu mà na quá ni rong tôi là khá vậy anh sẽ ai phụ là khá mà là khá mà rồi là làm mà cho nên thì thế sang phụ đó là gì một chi vậy đó là nó bút ra đến khai sĩ quan cái mà lấy đăng đi cho cô làm cho thế sang phụ ra cho mà gì mà là yêu mà là quá ni xóm đi ra xây tuột ít thôi để khá mà chứ là khá mà năng đi là này mà năng đi quăng gì là tôi đã thì là được xong là năng đi quật năng đi chi mà được xong là nhắm ba tiền đến thế thả đèn ra chim là khá cái ba cái tâm năng đi sắp bắt đầu năng đi quăng với quay năng đi nhắmช่วงเสียเดี๋ยวนั้นพิธันนั้นบอกว่าตัวข้าพเจ้าการโอกี่ลาบเสร็จพิธันนั้นบอกว่าการโอกี่ดามาโอ้ยบลาบลาบเดลีจาระอีเสจาไม่นอนเดี๋ยวจะจีอัดปัตอาข้าพเจ้ามาจ้าบลานังรีดาวตาจีมาเลยสมวันดาวนาโตดีทอนมาจ้าบลาอาจจะไม่ที่เลยอาหนองไม่เบื่อเธอbayra almantajim almantaji kiam thosi adogamal bali thewadi koiri klangji badam
Telefon cevap Tonjim? Telefon Jim? So here when it's one way test, he tests whether or not he was able to call onto the spirit to do is, you know, we a lot of people have short lives, some have long life, and there's a reason why that happens. It's not just by accident that it happens like that. And oftentimes one of the things or some of the things that happens is the fear that the other obstacles in life that causes fear or other things that are counter to life force. And so to crystallize one's being, so if you can crystallize your life force, so to speak, the thing that makes our existence possible, not just the physical material elements like the elements of fire, elements of water, elements of earth, elements of air, those are common among everybody. We all have that. Nature have it, plants have it, animals have it. It is not those elements that help us have a living force. Those elements are common, but this thing that we call, you know, living, and that living thing, the existence of that depends on many things. A lot of time our karmic, a lot of time other stuff that comes into our life. So in order for us to live longer, we have to remove the things that darkens that light. Okay? So just when we're born as a baby, that light is it's an optimal force. There's a force that is growing. There's some kind of a germinations. Everything just that the energy is there. But as you get older and older, maybe even in the old age, like our 10th phase of life. 10th phase is phase 1 is 1 to 10 years, 10 to 11 to 20 years, and so on and so. and this energy gets dissipated, and it gets dissipated because of many of the forces that that reduces that. So one way he makes that body like a baby again, is to crystallize that force, that then you become almost like a little baby, in not just the spirit, but also in body. So that's why you will see when people get old, like 90, 95, then they will have even if they lost their teeth, and you will see teeth growing again, and so other faculties, sense faculties developing. And so it is that Bonpo was doing here. You saw some of why he was putting the rice and why he was calling on the light and the flower. So in short, that's what Bonpo said. And I think that's it.
Well, thank you,
We
Ganesh.
will open up for any questions. So if you have,
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Stan is back if Stan has any questions.
Stan, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, they can hear you. Very good.
I can't tell you how much I appreciated the blessing, and the translation was excellent. I could follow everything along very, very closely. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
you're
I
welcome.
have
We're
been
so
very
honored.
fortunate to get many blessings throughout the years. I think that has really helped me navigate through what admittedly is a very turbulent and difficult life. The blessings always help. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. We're very honored that we're invited to do this small ceremony for you, and I will communicate that to the Bonpo. So it is our pleasure that we're able to do this.
Yes, please give our gratitude to the Bonpo, and thank you, Ganesh, for being here, making this possible, translating. It's always good to see the two of you here. So it's wonderful that you are part of our community, and we sure appreciate all your blessings. And tomorrow morning we will start again at 9 o'clock.
Just one thing is that the
Hold on. I think he's trying to say something. Hold on. Oh.
The Bonpo will be here in this area. He has visited before. He's participated in the conference, and he will be doing some.
No, I would think
Then somebody swore in there.
He says Stanley, you're very, very fortunate being. You're very lucky. You have your sign is very one of wealth sign. So you're actually was born on in a very good auspicious day. So he says yes. That's it, Jinji?
Gyaba tiklaya siwa mama tiklaya Rashi khub Rashi Deda Rashi Dhan Maivan Namsa this Samasan Sameng Batum đi năm đại diện Tamaran pura thik kabula thik này ta bare.
He says that Sally, you have a full life, and so you don't have to worry about anything. Everything looks very good on you, and because you were born on a fortunate timing, your sign is actually very a sign of the fortune. It is because of that, he says, that many people have been able to live because of you, make a living because of you, make a life because of your work. Your existence has helped many people live better lives. That's what he said. That many people depend on you for their livelihood. Not just livelihood as in you're earning and giving them money, that might be true too, but also because of what you have done, that others have been able to make their career because of your work. That's what he says. I don't know if that's.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, thank the Bonpo again for his.
Well, that's it, but they're not done about right.
Does he want to say more?
And
Gonna-
he's still looking. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so everything looked good. So nothing to worry about. You are in good shape. So you have a full life, he says.
Tamasan buat bebas mandi. Dajen tamasan dajen mana dajen yang sekarang sepana lagi.
He says because of you, many people have gotten jobs, have gotten life. So he says. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Bonpo.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it looks very good. Yeah, he says.
Thank you, Ganesh, too.
What a beautiful blessing for you, Stan. Thank you, Bonpo, for the blessing. And we will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Stan has received some dreams that he will work with. So we'll start at 9 o'clock, and we have an afternoon session further discussing dreams and somatic interpretations of dreams. So I will see you then. Thank you all for being here. And after the conference, the video will be posted. I'm not sure when exactly, but we will do that. So have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.